Welcome to the Cash Flow to Legacy podcast, where we touch on financial topics, correct bad math, respond to interesting conversations online, and ultimately teach you how to use cash flow to fuel your legacy. Today, we're going to be talking about some problems in the personal finance industry, and hopefully you'll get to know us a little bit. So I'm Derek Morrell. I founded a company called Bankonomics, where we bring clarity to complex questions. And really, I'm just teaching strategies I found as a real estate investor over 10 years ago. So I'd love to introduce to you my co-hosts. Let's go ahead and meet you guys real quick.
Yeah, thank you, Derek, for hosting us. My name is Noah Velasquez, president and founder of Arcstone. My focus is simple, helping families, entrepreneurs, and business owners think differently about wealth and legacy, not just how to make more money, but how to protect it, use it, multiply it, and eventually pass it on with purpose. A lot of what we have here is centered around building financial foundation that actually works in real life, one that creates control, liquidity, protection, and long-term legacy. And here joining me, I have is CEO and co-founder Gabriel Church, my dear trusted friend, business partner, and visionary of Arcstone. Gabriel brings a really strong perspective on our strategies here, leadership, and bigger picture when it comes to their money and their future. So Gabe, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So it's nice to meet everybody. My name is Gabe Church. You can call me Gabriel. I am the CEO and visionary over at Arcstone, and everything that Noah said is pretty much on point with what we want to do. The main vision and where I really bring a different perspective is trying to blend the everyday layman understanding of finance and faith into a perspective where we can just feel free, have clarity, and really bring ourselves to a place where we're no longer fearing the word money, where it's okay to open your bank account no matter what size it is, and you can begin to move without anticipation of something messing up. And so blending that mission over commission, that faith in finance, that's really my ideal job here at Arcstone. And I'm really looking forward to being able to share what I have come through in the financial world with you all here on the podcast. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's great, guys. So here we are. It's our first episode. Hopefully, have many episodes to come. So I'm kind of excited about this. And, we just want to be able to share some stuff with folks, have a good time while we do it. And let's just jump right in, guys. So today we're going to talk about the personal finance space. What do you guys think's wrong with the personal finance space in the first place? Whether it's personal finance, investment advice, maybe it's just the whole financial industry. Where are you guys on there? And what are you seeing as you talk to people in your experiences?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and kick that off, Derek. In my perspective, the biggest problem about our industry is really advice doesn't meet people where they are. It's like these fad diets that you see, and everybody's pushing this one size fits all strategy, but they don't really align with real lives. Instead of offering clarity, practical tools that the industry tends to put this expectation onto people, and it becomes overwhelming. And I think that we really need to just meet people where they are, start at their level, instead of trying to push big, giant programs on individuals that feel overwhelming and really turn them off.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point, Gabe. For sure, 100% agree. It's misalignment. I would say, at least on my end, just looking at it, it's definitely clarity of their values, right? The intangible aspects of them. Sometimes people know what they got to do, right? Sometimes it's simple. It's just they don't actually do it, right? And is peeling the onion back of understanding why, you're not taking action. Is it fear? Is it a dynamic within a family, loved one, significant other, lack of clarity of future purpose? So all that to say, a lot of the intangibles, that way it can become a reality on that for front end.
Yeah. And just to add, those are great points. At the end of the day, it almost feels, and it's not just the finance industry, it feels like we live in a massive funnel, right? Everyone's trying to sell something to us. Everything's in some funnel. There's always, follow the profits. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but it is something to think through. And really, in my opinion, the system's definitely rigged, right? And so think about this. You have big banks. They want you to save a bunch of money. So they want you to put your paycheck. They want you to put your emergency funds. Let's say you're saving $10,000 or $50,000. You put that into a savings account. They're going to pay you diddly squat. Maybe if you're a good boy and a good girl and you do all these things, maybe they'll give you a little bit extra interest. But what are they doing, guys? Well, they're taking your money. And Noah, if you put in $50K at a bank and you have an emergency fund, well, they're going to lend most of that out. to other people. So if I apply for a credit card, or if Gabriel goes to apply for a car loan, when the banks are getting these piles of money, they're doing fractional reserve lending. So they need you to put savings in their banks because they're going to pay you 0.5%, but they're going to charge Gabe 7 or 8% on his car, right? And then they're going to charge me 20% on a credit card, etc. And it's funneled in all of those places. If you put money in the markets and securities, that's all funneled to Wall Street. Wall Street's using mutual funds to pay for companies that are owned by the really wealthy people in the companies. And then you have things like the S&P, where 14, 15 top companies are worth, they make up the value of like 40 of the whole S&P 500. Think about that. 15 or so companies, last I looked, make up the value, almost half, 40% or so of the S&P 500. So that means 485 other companies make up the rest of it. And so does that mean it's bad or evil to put money in those places? No, that's not my argument. My argument is to know how the game works, because at the end of the day, we can complain about how it works and who's making the money, but we're all in it, right? We're in the system. So if you learn some basics, how to play the game, but also how to protect yourself, it makes so much more sense. And that's kind of what we're getting at. I think us three is educating on that and moving forward that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing I would like to say, Derek, is where do people start? That's the big thing. I think individuals start to get overwhelmed. They think about money. I mean, myself, one of the things that I was always told growing up was, hey, don't ask about how much I make, son. That's none of your business. And then even, my grandpa, same thing, how much did that truck cost? Don't you worry about how much this truck costs. Just know that we're going fishing. And so that's where I would say I love the idea of having the market. I like that there are banks that offer a money market savings account. I have one myself. If I'm going to use a tool, I would say let's find the best tool that we can use. But again, where do people start? How do we educate ourselves? And so that's what I would ask, not just you guys here to give clarity on, but to the people out there watching. Ask yourselves, what do I know? What is fact? What is fiction?
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing points, guys. Again, we're kind of getting back into intangibles, right? It's like really the basics of the mind, of the function, the structure, right? There's so much information and it's kind of information overload. So to me, it's, I don't know, it's two ways. Of course, I can like dive deep into the structural mechanic of like every investment in the world, right? And then I can also self evaluate myself and my identity, which I think is very important. And where what do I value is like the first foundational question to me that I will ask for myself. And to be frank with anybody that we work with in Arcstone, because everybody's governing authority within themselves is very different, right? You got people that are going to be very impulsive, and where, hey, you can have all the vast understanding that Eric is putting down, with the statistics, the history, the factual, tangible facts, and I'm just being impulsive. So you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to be a hamster in a hamster wheel running out of energy, staying in the same place, right? The rat race. So I think that's, to me, what governs your life is like the number one question you have to answer yourself, foundationally speaking, and then we can talk about the fancy stuff. I think everybody tries to get to the fancy stuff way too quickly, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I know we've talked a bunch, us three. We've been getting to know each other for a while now, almost a year, which is awesome. And we talk about that, right? We talk about foundations. We talk about first principles. We talk about that in our faith. We talk about it in our family values, in our finances. But it's funny. I think it was yesterday or the day before. So on social media, you get what you get on social media. But there was kind of a side debate where someone wanted to pay off their mortgage, and it was at 1.99%. At least this is what the post was, right? And so some people said, don't pay it off because you can make more than 1.9% elsewhere. Well, the guy arguing to pay off the mortgage was saying, well, no, because you're paying the volume of interest. And there is an argument about the volume of interest. The volume of interest is huge. So volume of interest is, let's say you have let's say you have a mortgage, right? 30-year mortgage. And if you're at 5-6%, well, those early years, you're mostly paying interest, right? So the volume of interest, if you were to sell the national average for refinances, selling a house, last I looked, somewhere in that 7-8 years or so, meaning someone's going to either sell, they're going to refinance, they're going to foreclose, something's going to happen where they change over. Well, the volume of interest is massive there because you're paying probably upwards to 80, 70, 80% of your payment in interest, which is horrible. However, if you spread it out over the 30 years, if it's a 30-year mortgage, so go back to this 1.9%, their volume of interest might be, say, 20% in that scenario. But what people don't realize, and this is just something, in my opinion, that I see lacking in the financial space, is, and there's nothing wrong with paying off your mortgage. If it's 1.9%, nothing wrong with paying off. It's not an evil versus good argument. However, why would I, if it was me, why would I put as much money as possible to pay off my 1.99% mortgage, which is real low, by the way, if that's even realistic, but let's just say it is. And it takes years to do that. Say it takes 10 years and I pay off my mortgage. Wow. Well, what did I do? I chased saving call it 2%. I chased saving 2% on a mortgage to then have equity in my house that earns 0%, because equity in your house doesn't earn any return whatsoever, right? So think about that. And I can break that down of why, but your house appreciates, say it appreciates 5% a year. That's appreciation. But whether you have no loan or you have 100% loan to value max out loan, the house still appreciates at 5%. So whether you have debt or not, it's still growing. But why would I chase to pay off 2% on a mortgage to then make 0% thereafter when the opportunity cost is staggering? It's staggering. And what I try to tell people is, even if you wanted to have zero debt, well, if your mortgage payment, let's just say it's $2,000 a month right now, and it's for 30 years, and you got this low mortgage, well, that means in year 29 and 11 months, you're still paying $2,000 of the principal and interest. Yes, taxes, insurance can go up, but that $2,000 30 years from now is probably going to feel like $800 today, right? So what happens is, when you know how the math works and how banks work, a long-term fixed payment, if you have a game plan and a strategy, could be in your benefit, knowing how inflation works. So in an inflationary environment, a fixed payment is really good for a borrower, assuming the interest isn't too high. But those are little tweaks. When we understand how the math works, it helps us in this game plan of strategy. Like you were saying, Noah, the foundations, when we know the foundations here, now we can make better decisions. And look, if you're like, yeah, the math doesn't make sense, but look, if I could pay off my mortgage, I will feel so good. I'll sleep at night. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think we're arguing that. But knowing the math and then doing the mindset, I think it's super helpful.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Derek. I just wanted to do a quick little analogy, within just understanding the positioning of strategy, right?
Wow.
To your point of like, feeling, right? The emotional side, which I would love Gabe to get into. But before that, just think about avalanche approach towards debt and snowball. What are like the main big difference? Why do people try to do the snowball versus the avalanche? I mean, honestly, right? The avalanche is what? Just to kind of set it up, is attacking the highest interest. Mathematically, does that work? All day, every day. Like, the math is mathing. Like, you're hitting the highest interest, regardless if your loan or whatever the case may be is significantly large or very, very small. You're tackling the debt that's attacking you the hardest. But snowball, why would people argue that, hey, do the snowball effect? The warm and fuzzies, the feeling is it doesn't matter if like the interest could be significantly less. It wouldn't mathematically make sense to do that. But, I get my little dopamine spike that, oh, I paid off that credit card, completely in full. Some people need that, right? But no, I love that, Derek, because you're talking about positioning, and is the mathing is everyone should care about, right? It's in your vested interest to do so. But then also understanding, does this work for me, right? In the sense of how I know myself, more importantly. And that's all. Just wanted to make that quick little note to emphasize your amazing point.
I want to say something to that. So absolutely, education breaks the one thing that here in the United States, I think, cultural norms, right? So we had to educate ourselves past it, because I'll argue against Noah's point, avalanche versus snowball. Avalanche is great. I happen to like that. I love, go take out the biggest debt and now there it is. It's got bigger payment for, even if it's not even the biggest debt, it's just a bigger payment because of the interest, right? But does it give me the warm and fuzzies? And unfortunately, the American dream, I chased down the American dream. I'm a 20-year construction worker that's come out of that trade and educated myself into another aspect of life and understanding. And I'll say that that was my wife and I's main thing, guys, was pay off that house, American dream, buy a Harley, have toys, make sure that the kids are dressing in, Air Force Ones. And it's like cultural norms will destroy somebody and stop them. It's in my opinion, the plague of keeping up with the Joneses, it's very real. Now, to throw something out there, I would ask this question, Derek, I need a new car, man, but my home is paid off. What would be better? Should I pull out a HELOC? Might as well throw all of my debt into that. I don't own my home anymore, but I'll get the pink slip to my car. What becomes more important? The warm and fuzzies. Do I want to feel good about owning my vehicle and being debt free? Or do I want to feel good and where do I go? Is it because I want to tell you, Derek, I own my house? Or is it I really want to get ahead in life and what is the best strategy? Thinking about math. And for someone like me who is can become particularly feelings based, hey, I see that thing. I want it. I'm going to go get it no matter what. What about those people like me? I'm not saying that I still do that. And I am saying that education was the catalyst that brought me to the next level. But, I'll press on your guys' expertise in a situation like that.
I don't know
Well,
if
if
you
you were
want to.
asking me, yeah, I mean, one, I probably wouldn't have a paid off house because if I paid off my house, I'd want to use lines of credit against it to go do other things, right? And understand what we're saying is we're not saying be reckless, right? There's one thing to be smart and strategic. It's another thing to be reckless, right? And so I came from investing, right? So I was as of 2014 full-time investor, real estate investor. And so I don't look just at the math of like, oh, I'm going to save, 1.3% on this delta between these two options. And therefore, I'm going to change the next 40 years of my life to change. Like, I don't look at stuff like that. What I look at, yes, I look at the math, but I also want flexibility. I also know that if I have a paid off house, and this goes for anyone, if you have a paid off house, your liability goes up significantly, especially if it's a paid off non-homestead house, and a lot of that's state specific. If you come into trouble, let's say you're paying off your house, so your mortgage is $2,000, but you're throwing $3,000 a month at it, right? You're doing that. That's 12 extra thousand a year, and you do it for years and years and years. Well, before you get to that fully paid off house, if you come into some cash flow issues, well, you still owe that $2,000 if that's your base payment. Plus, you might owe taxes, insurance, and all that. But I'm just talking about the principal and interest. Well, who does the bank want to work with more? If you have higher leverage on the house or if you have lower leverage, they'll just assume you get foreclosed. So every time someone's paying extra to their mortgage, it makes the bank feel better. One, it gives them more cash flow so they can relend their money. Two, it makes their position on your house more secure, which makes them want to foreclose on you even faster if that comes to fruition, right? So those are just side comments. We can unpack those later. But yeah, if I'm looking at a car versus a house, I'd be treating my house like a bank,
Yes.
right? Because that's literally what it is. You can have all the equity in the world. If you have $200,000 of equity in your house, it just sits there. You can't carve off, 54 bricks that equate to, $1,000.
Yeah.
Well, you have to get loans and liens against your house in order to do that. So I would bank against my house. However, we know, and we'll be unpacking this in the months to come, in weeks to come, there's better strategies that are way more efficient to give us the ability, just like an asset, like a house, that you can bank out of at a foundational level. And it's so awesome. So long story short, I wouldn't be afraid to take lines of credit against my house to then buy the car. But then it does depend on the interest rates and stuff like that, if that was going to be one of the arguments.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, my quick little side note. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Derek, for sure. I don't know, Gabe. I think personal finance is not only about what you know, it's 100% also what you do consistently, regardless of what your value is going to be, And I think that's the core essence for anybody is the discipline of following through whatever you do, Derek's approach and understanding of cash flow, right? Of just like, hey, the math is mapping on a cash flow perspective that is truly safeguarding everything, family, right? Again, there's a lot of intangibles here that is my argument or my point, better said, with this. And me personally, for my HELOC, I've leveraged a whole bunch of it. I mean, part of it with Arcstone as well, doing mini projects as well. And, that takes time and expertise to kind of get through. And, obviously subject matter experts and et cetera, to each their own. But for me, that will be my approach as well, for sure, by having clear understanding. And obviously, if you have multiple parties, right? You got your wife, Gabe, everybody got to be on the same page, man. That's all I got to say. As part of the foundation as well.
Yeah, that's good. So let's do this as we kind of get ready to land this plane here. What are some key takeaways? Maybe we already mentioned some, but what are some specific ways we can maybe add value to this often murky world of finance? I know for me, and I'll throw it to you in a second, I know for me, it's clarity. So it's besides even opening a calculator, it's like, what is that canvas that needs to be done? And to me, it's clarity, it's strategy and planning, having a game plan, knowing where you're headed is so important. And then control. Control is necessary, right? Because for instance, even with a line of credit, well, the banks still have, depending on how you do it and the strategies, the banks still have a lot to say. It's the same with getting a credit card. Like, well, I got a credit card. Now I have, $10,000 or $20,000 of credit. That helps me feel good because that's an emergency fund. Well, it's not really smart to use that as an emergency fund because the bank tomorrow could say, you know what, instead of that 20K, we're going to drop this down to 1,500 because the economy is changing, or you know what, just because we want to and we can. So you don't have control over those means. And then the other thing that you guys mentioned as well is positioning. It's knowing where society is, how the money is adding up. There's there's AI, there's cryptocurrencies now, there's all this stuff. Knowing how that game works, where it's going, who controls it. So I'm constantly telling people, think to 2030. Things are changing. And so in order to make those better decisions on top of that foundation, you have to kind of know where you are in the game on the map.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I love it. You used two words there, control and clarity. And then I just kind of wanted to cut through a little bit of the noise and focus on some foundational steps that people can really absorb easily. Nelson Nash spoke about control. He's somebody that I look up to. I do follow it. And, bringing it back to keeping it stupid simple. There's the emergency fund. You said something about that. Build out 3 months, build out 6 months, long before you start putting yourself into any fads or trends. Let's get something that is tangible. You have control over an emergency fund, but it is exactly that, Derek. It's an emergency fund. And most times when we find ourselves in that state, it's because something bad's happened and we don't have a lot of wiggle room. At the same time, understanding your numbers, it's so important to know what your income versus your expenses are. And once you have clarity on that, now you can make a better decision, more informed, and you don't have to have that. Am I making the right choice? Is this the right thing? I personally hate that feeling. So what I like to do is focus on helping people align with strategies that affect them in their real lives. And I'm never trying to have people chase trends. Am I saying that, hey, there's a big crypto deal that you're looking at? That's terrible. Don't work. No, not at all. I'm saying make sure that you're in a spot where you feel good jumping into any decision that you make.
Yeah, Gabe, I think that's an amazing points there. I mean, for me, to simplify, and I'll give an example like Derek did, we add value by bringing clarity, simplicity, honest diagnosis of the situation, right? We got to really dig, especially as financial advisors, and a process, to your point, Gabe, like people can actually follow, right? To their level, right? Because not everyone is the same. If not, then the world will be a very different place. But that to me is how you truly target providing clarity in an often murky world of finance, Derek. And an example of that is, like understanding your positioning today, what it was before to not have it repeat today. And then what it can potentially be, which there's a lot of debate on, but you can make an educated guess on what that can be like, prepare with it for whatever that's worth, emergency fund or whatever the case may be, and go from there. A quick example of that, you mentioned, Derek, of, credit cards, bank having leverage essentially in a moment's notice. If I would argue to say, credit cards, if you know what you're doing, you can pretty much reverse the script, right? You can leverage all the rewards, all the points. They could have a credit card that's 100% interest. But if you know your closing statement date and you consistently pay it off right before that, you get charged no interest. You get, a plethora of reward points. And now you're the bank in that sense because you understand today's strategy. Right now, whether or not that's going to change in the future, different. You can premeditate and prepare. You could be a good steward of that credit card, racking up all your vacation points and hotel points for later for you and your family. And then later on, you're like, I see and I smell with the political environment that, you know what, this is probably going to happen. I best be prepared for that. Right. And that comes with having a strong foundation of understanding, to your point, today, yesterday, and the future to come. But I do believe on how we can provide that is just simply really digging deep into those foundations, right? Which we can talk forever about. And it's really what governs you, right? And there's many coins to it, right? There's the head, the tails, and the side. And just being able to identify that and foundationally still speaking to those realities, right? Because there's a difference with, illusions and a hope, right? An illusion is something that you're just looking at and you want it to be something. It's our job to be like, hey, I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry, sister. That doesn't work. That's just not what it is, right? And then it's like, hey, this is a hopeful plan that has that emotional intelligence behind it with the mathing to actually make a tangible, difference to yourself and your future.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So like you said, we could go deep into this. We can keep talking. And what we'll do is we're going to roll out some more episodes, of course, and we'll break down pieces of this as we go. So I think that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for joining us here. We're excited to be with you on this journey. Please subscribe to our channel, like our videos, please share our videos, and stay tuned for our next episode. God bless.